Yes, in a way, Kemi Badenoch is a high-risk strategy, but perhaps we need a high-risk strategy in order to win back the next general election. What she realizes very clearly is that there's got to be a clear set of policies, and we've got to address issues such as migration. Otherwise, the right will consistently beat Labour at general elections, but it'll be split between the Conservative Party and Reform. So unless the Conservative Party can actually replace Reform, that doesn't mean adopting all of Reform's policies, far from it. But unless people can see that it's worth voting for the Conservative Party, it's all academic because we won't get back into power.
Is no less important. It is to prepare over the course of the next few years for government to ensure that by the time of the next election, we have not just a clear set of Conservative pledges that appeal to the British people, but a clear plan for how to implement them. A clear plan to change this country by changing the way that government works. The Prime Minister is discovering all too late the perils of not having such a plan. That huge job begins today.
Joining me now is the former Conservative MP for Lichfield, Michael Fabricant. Michael, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Theo. Look forward to it.
Now, you backed Robert Jenrick to win this Conservative leadership race. Your man hasn't won, but do you think it's possible for everybody to get in the tent and play nice?
Well, they have to get together and get in the tent and play nice, because if they don't, we're going to be not only in opposition for years and years and years, we'll deserve to be in opposition for years and years and years. So we really do have to pull together. I mean, one of the reasons why we lost so badly, in my opinion, at the last general election was because of the utter farce of the disloyalty to Boris Johnson. Then we had Liz Truss. Then we had Rishi Sunak. I mean, I couldn't keep pace with what Prime Minister was in power at what time. And I was only sitting behind them when I was on the back benches.
When you look at Kemi Badenoch, she is known for missteps, and sometimes when she makes those missteps, notably when she said that maternity pay was excessive at the Conservative Party conference, she sometimes turns around and tries to blame other people for those mistakes. Do you think she's going to be able to get away with that as the leader of the Conservative Party?
No, she can't. She's going to have to be much more careful with what she says. But, you know, yes, in a way, Kemi Badenoch is a high-risk strategy, but perhaps we need a high-risk strategy in order to win back the next general election. What she realizes very clearly is that there's got to be a clear set of policies, and we've got to address issues such as migration. Otherwise, the right will consistently beat Labour at general elections, but it'll be split between the Conservative Party and Reform. So unless the Conservative Party can actually replace Reform, that doesn't mean adopting all of Reform's policies, far from it. But unless people can see that it's worth voting for the Conservative Party, it's all academic because we won't get back into power.
When you're looking at Reform, and of course under Nigel Farage, we now learn that they have 90,000 members, and today we learned the Conservative Party only has 131,000 members. Is the Conservative Party at a moment of when its existence it can be brought into question? Actually, you know, Kemi Badenoch, the stakes are for the Conservative Party unbelievably high.
You know, I think that's a fair assumption in a way, Theo, because the membership, as you quite rightly say, demonstrates that. And incidentally, what I thought was particularly interesting was the large number of people who didn't actually bother to vote. Those people who were entitled to vote, the members, it was a very low turnout compared to other leadership elections. I think it was something like 71 or 72%, when normally it's up in the 90s. It is existential, and that's why the stakes are so high in making sure that we do, you know, go forward with very, very clear policies, which is what Kemi Badenoch has pledged. And one of those policies, which is going to have to be thought about very carefully indeed, is whether or not we remain in the ECHR, whether it's necessary to leave the ECHR if we're going to control our borders. Now, it was always made clear by Rob Jenrick that in his view, we would have to leave the ECHR. Other lawyers say, well, that may not be the case. We may not have to leave the ECHR. We just have to change the Human Rights Act, which is a relatively recent bit of legislation brought in by Tony Blair. And that's something that we're going to have to decide upon. And that, if you like, is the crucial move to determine whether or not reform will have a major impact on the outcome of the next general election or not.
But the reason, and I'm sure you've identified this, and certainly Robert Jenrick did, the reason the ECHR is so important is because whoever is in power is going to have to find a way to stop small boats crossing the English Channel with migrants who then need to be housed at great expense and in communities across this country, which of course in turn causes its own frictions. Because many of these hotels are in much poorer parts of the country where accommodation is much cheaper. And that's why we have to that's the problem, the next, whether it's this government under Keir Starmer or another Conservative government, that's the problem that needs to be tackled, isn't it? Now, is it your view that that cannot be done whilst we remain under the auspices of the ECHR, or do you think actually reform in some form, reform's argument or reform of the ECHR is actually possible whilst we remain signatories?
I don't think that reform of the ECHR is possible. I really don't. We always used to say, at least Remainers used to say, come on, we can reform the way that the European Union works from the inside. Oh, no, we couldn't. And oh, no, we won't as far as the ECHR are concerned, because there are so many other countries involved. But the question which I think is interesting is, do we actually need to have to leave the ECHR to have control over our borders? Because it's possible, some arguments are made, that we can just change, as I said earlier, the Human Rights Act. In Denmark, they have opted out of certain aspects of the European Court of Human Rights. And they've changed their own internal legislation to say that the Borgen, is it, in other words, the Parliament of Denmark has supremacy over the ECHR. Now, I'm not an international lawyer, far from it, but if the Danes can do it, I'm pretty sure we could do it. So this is what I think Kemi Badenoch is going to have to explore from day one.
Michael Fabricant, the former Conservative MP for Lichfield, I'm very grateful for your time this afternoon. Thank you.